Hey everyone, welcome back to Pulling Threads. I'm Leslie, and today's episode is one I feel deeply connected to because it touches on something that has shaped my own healing journey. It's learning to rebuild self trust and reclaim your voice after losing it in a relationship or many relationships that didn't honor your worth. So many women, especially those who've been in toxic or narcissistic relationships, know that quiet ache of wondering, how did I lose myself? And where do I go from here? I personally experienced that when I went to a retreat several years ago. And when they asked what we wanted to work on, I didn't know. And I just said, I feel like I'm in a fog and I don't know myself anymore and I don't know how I got here. I have spent years healing and going through my journey to get where I am today. And it was with the help of many other women, professionals, and non professionals who supported me. But today we have a special treat. We are joined by someone who helps women answer this question and start to live their lives differently. Clarissa Stolte is a therapist and toxic relationship coach who created the Reclaiming Her Voice method, a trauma informed program that helps women break the cycle of self doubt and rediscover calm, confidence, and authentic connections. So, welcome, Clarissa. I'm so excited that you're here.
Leslie, I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for letting me be on your podcast.
I can't wait to have this conversation. Clarissa, I came across your tagline, rebuild self-trust, reclaim your voice, rewrite your story, and that it just hit me like right in the heart. What inspired that message?
So I feel like I can go into my whole life story trying to answer that question. I will save the audience and the listeners from having to hear the whole life story. In short, that answer can pretty much be summed up with so I grew up in a narcissistic family system myself.
Okay.
And in my family system, there was three generations of narcissists. And the short kind of version of that was my dad was kind of like the scapegoat child of his generation. And I ended up kind of just automatically getting put into that scapegoat kind of, you know, category myself
Yeah.
whenever I got old enough to start kind of questioning like why do things not always seem like they're right? Or why, you know, do we have to do it this way? Or why can't we talk about how we're feeling in the family? Why can't we be honest with other people about anything going on in the family? Like just questioning things, and
Yeah.
and really that kind of stemmed into I wasn't being controllable. I was questioning authority,
Ah.
right? So now
Yep.
that I'm the scapegoat as well. I don't think it helped that I was also the youngest grandchild and the only granddaughter within like 300 miles. So I don't think those were helping factors.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely not. So, how did your own life lead you to this work and helping women heal from narcissistic and toxic relationships?
There was definitely a lot of, I mean, it wasn't something that happened overnight. Like you said, it was something that I was healing from the worst of my stuff being from like middle school through like literally graduating high school and leaving. It took that moment of being able to put the distance there, which I mean, now we think about how everyone, if they're trying to heal from toxic relationships, they're trying to go no contact. That's that distance that they're seeking, right?
Yeah.
Mine
Yep.
was like this physical thing of needing to put that physical distance between myself and my family.
Hmm.
With that distance, I was able to start healing. I actually found and met my husband right at the beginning of that journey, and he was my rock. And I don't know how I would have done half the selling without him because it was like that soundboard I needed to be able to like validate that
Yeah.
my experience was not normal. Like, because, when you grow up with it, you feel like that's just normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I've never known anything else that's normal. And it took seeing other people's experiences and thinking, wait, my experience is not normal.
Yeah.
Um, Another part I can add to that was the healing took just so much time because it was something that I feel like I ended up kind of doing it on my own. Like I never saw any counseling, which is kind
Mm.
of crazy because I know everyone's like, you're a counselor. Why didn't you go talk to a counselor?
Right.
The short answer to that is I had a really negative experience with my first counselor because it
Mm.
was the school counselor. He, in essence, kind of pulled me into his office like I was going to the principal's office, is the feeling.
Right.
And when you're raised in this family system of like, we don't talk about our problems, right? For
Yep.
me to have that moment where I'm like, here's an adult asking me, like, what's the matter? I should open up and say something, right? Like, I was
Mhm.
like
Right.
freshman in high school at this age.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like 15, 16. And I made myself open up and say something, which felt
Right.
really uncomfortable. And he pretty much minimized it all. So, quoting him, he pretty much told me to just try harder to get the other kids to like me and that
Huh.
maybe I should be put on some medication.
Wow.
I was like, wow, I can't believe you just told me that. You know,
Mhm.
it really ended up turning into this pivotal moment for me, though, because I realized that me not having anyone to go talk to and feeling like I was so isolated and having, I mean, literally, um, all of my peers and teachers like seeing what was happening because it was following me into school. Like
Right.
this relationship that I had with my narcissistic cousin, who was only a year older than me, was following me into school. He was having all his friends bully me for him. So he could say he didn't have anything to do with it. Oh, it wasn't me. It was them, you know?
Yeah.
And to have all the other teachers, all the peers, all the bystanders just not do anything, it really validated that if I wanted to see a change, it was like almost I need to become it.
Right. Right.
I kind of vowed to myself that I wanted to be able to help other women not feel that moment that I felt.
I think that so many people do recognize the effects of emotional abuse in romantic relationships now. And people understand that they're probably going to need to get help. Some people understand trauma bonds more than before because
Yes.
there's so much more information out there to help, especially women, get out of emotionally abusive relationships. However, we still don't talk a lot about what it's like to be part of a family system like this, or have parents like this, or a sibling like this. Like, people don't talk about what happens to us when we grow up surrounded by it. And it is normalized to some extent, some of the things that happen, I think.
Absolutely. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Like when you grow up with it, like I said before, it's so you just think it's normal. You don't even think of
Hmm.
anything else because you've never known anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're dealing with that narcissist all day, every day, I mean, thank goodness my narcissist didn't live in the house with me. So that was my little saving grace. But I still
Right.
lived in the same town with them.
Yeah.
And
And went to the same school.
I went to the same school. And when I'm talking small town, small school, let me paint this picture of less than 1,000 people in this town and
Hmm.
probably 200 kids in the whole school from K to 12.
Wow. Yeah.
I was literally going all day long with the same group of kids to every single class.
And the message that you received from that counselor was really to just silence your own intuition and what you believed was happening, and that something must be wrong with you instead of recognizing something was happening to you, which probably just solidified some of the programming you had already had from the family system.
And you're absolutely right. And you get conditioned that you must be the problem because you're the only one making the waves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you would just go along with everyone else, everything would be fine.
Yeah. And these types of relationships can come at you in friendships too, in work relationships. And it's so hard to trust yourself when someone else, especially a professional, questions what you're saying. Because I remember realizing like how long I had silenced my intuition and how often like I second guessed what I knew to be true, either to keep the peace or because someone told me they knew better. And there was a moment when I decided, no, I can trust myself again. And in trusting myself, it did allow so much peace, so much authenticity. And I think that's what I love about your program and your messaging that you're putting out there. Like, trusting yourself is the key to being yourself and becoming more magnetic, attracting the people and the opportunities that you want in life, and finding peace.
It really is.
So, yeah. So you specialize in trauma-informed recovery for women. So would you say the moment when you were very, very young, you realized that was your calling, or was it later on?
I mean, I would pretty much say it was that moment when I was about 16, 17, right? That moment when I felt like here I am a girl and I have this guy, this grown man telling me to, just try harder to make others like you. And just, you know, kind of lay down and take it.
Right.
But I really feel like even in my later years, whenever, after I went and got the education and started working with clients, I worked with such a broad range of clients. I think I can't imagine that very many counselors have as much broad range as I've had. I've worked with teenagers, troubled youth, and adolescents. I've worked with teenagers and troubled youth in residential treatment centers. I've worked with teenagers in public schools, just dealing with day to day stress and family issues. I've worked with young kids in elementary school, learning coping skills and self regulation skills. I've
Yeah.
worked with senior citizens, working with end of life issues and depression and grief, chronic
Mm,
pain.
yeah.
I've worked with military families with transitions and and deployment issues, and relocation.
Right.
But all these groups, I've enjoyed working with these groups. Don't get me wrong. But with all these groups, I never felt like I really resonated as much so as whenever I'll sit across from a client that's like, oh my God, it's like looking in a mirror. It's like, I know
Mm,
exactly what she's thinking. I know exactly what she's talking about. I've been there and I've already done the work, and it's like, I know what to tell you to get to the
right.
point that you need to be at. And you said it earlier, self trust is really the key because it's the first thing that's taken and it's
Yep.
like the last thing that you get back. But
Yep.
it really is
Yes.
just kind of the root of it all.
Right. And when you have it, you're like, oh, like the
Yeah.
pieces all come
The
together.
light bulb moment.
Uh, yes. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see about healing after any type of narcissistic abuse?
When you're talking about misconceptions, I think one of the biggest ones that you always hear is that, oh, just forgive and forget, move on, just let it go, act like it didn't happen, that kind of language. And when you're
Mhm.
talking about something like forgiving and forgetting, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not exactly true. Yes, there's an aspect of being able to forgive, but I'm not talking about needing to forgive the person. I'm talking about forgiveness in the aspects and the notions of being able to acknowledge that that happened. Not
Yeah.
that I'm agreeing with what happened. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just acknowledging that that's what happened, right?
Yeah.
Very basic
Yeah.
fact.
Right.
And being able to let go of the resentment and the anger that you feel
Mhm.
because, oh my God, that anger and resentment, it's like this living, breathing thing. I know when
Yeah.
I was in my teenage years, I don't know how I didn't go goth. Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
anger was just so strong. I was taking it out on everyone. Part of me was thinking like, "Wow, they don't really deserve this anger," but then the other part of me was kinda resentful too because it's like, you see what's going on, you just stay quiet, so I feel like you kinda do, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think too, people often tell my clients, and I've heard, you just have to forgive and let it go. But our nervous system can't just let something go. It's not about just forgiving and forgetting or forgetting and moving on. It's about feeling safe again and understanding what you need to do to feel safe. And it's because of the abuse, because of the trauma that is entangled in the abuse. Like, you're going to experience PTSD. You're going to experience times when you don't feel safe. So it's not just forgiving. It's not just forgiving and moving on. It's learning what happened to you, understanding it, and having tools to help you feel safe again. So much more than just forgiving.
Right. Yes, and that's a lot of what my program is gonna be and what it's based off of is it's kind of broken up into, like, 3 chunks. And the first
Hmm.
chunk is very much that being able to reconnect with the body, being able to work on your nervous system regulations
Hmm.
with those coping skills like somatic exercises, like breathing, mindfulness,
Yeah.
like being able to learn how to ground yourself. That way, when things happen, you don't feel like you have to go into that fight or flight or fawn response. Because
Right.
when we're in that state, I mean, like you said, when you look in the big DSM-5 book, right? And you think, what category would I label this under? You're looking at complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And when you're in that state of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, you are very much in that hypervigilance state where
Right.
it's like you're waiting. I call it the eye of the hurricane because it's like
Yeah.
that moment of calm. It's hard to explain to someone, well, why can't you just be calm? And it's
Okay.
like
Right. Right.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? I'm waiting for
Yeah.
the mask to slip. I'm waiting for the next big thing that's going to set everyone off and the next big problem we're going to have. I
Yeah.
can't be calm because calm normally means like something's brewing.
Hmm. Yes. Well, and also sometimes we're waiting for the nice. I think sometimes it's typically there's a mean nice pattern or cycle, and we're waiting for the nice again. So people see you when the times are really bad and they're like, why are you tolerating this? Because we have been trained to stay because we know eventually there will be a nice or there'll be some reward, right? Even though we know then it's going to go back. So what are some of the emotional or the nervous system patterns that keep women stuck in these dynamics or people stuck in these dynamics?
And you're absolutely right. There's definitely a cycle effect when it comes to narcissistic abuse. And why people stay stuck, a lot of it has to do with the self-doubt piece, right? How can
Yep.
I remember whenever I first started dating my husband, this came up. How can I trust someone else when I feel like I can't even trust myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really is, you know, plays a big mind part in where this program comes in too. That's the second component that I end up addressing is talking about the self-doubt, talking about being able to build up the trust, being able to build up that you don't need other people's validation. You can
Mm,
validate yourself.
right.
And that by doing these things, it really just slowly builds up your foundation to where you no longer feel like you have to worry about your safety. You know that you can actually handle hard things, like setting
Yeah.
the boundaries later that
Right.
are going to be uncomfortable.
Right. So, how do you help clients tell the difference between like self protection and self abandonment? Because it's a really fine line when you're used to walking on eggshells. Which are you doing? Are you protecting or are you abandoning?
When you're in that self protecting mode, it's kind of like survival mode.
Hmm.
You are just trying to do what you can to, again, not make the waves. So, when we're talking about self protection, we're talking about that need to feel safe. And when we're talking about the self abandonment, we're talking about, feeling like you need to shrink so no one leaves you. And we end up exploring that felt sense of each, how the body reacts when you're honoring yourself versus when you feel like you're betraying yourself.
Yep.
And in essence, it's like the self protection is that steady, clear, calm feeling. And the
Yep.
self abandonment can feel tight, anxious, and disconnected. And once women can feel the difference of those in their body, when they set those boundaries, it stops becoming like this theory of, well, I think I'm doing it right. Or I think I understand how to set boundaries. It stops becoming a theory and it starts becoming more instinctual.
Yeah, I think that's a huge differentiation and an easy one once you know it. But I know for me, I didn't know what embodied meant. I didn't know what it felt like to be in survival mode because I kind of always was. And it wasn't until I started really meditating and working with a therapist, and she would ask me in EMDRs, where do you feel it in your body? That I recognized, oh, when I'm processing trauma, like there's a tightness in my chest or there's a lump in my throat. I had never in 40 something years recognized that those were warning signs for me and that they were signs that I was in fight, flight, or freeze or in survival. And you're absolutely right. Like when I was being true to myself to protect myself, I wasn't lit up. I didn't have any sensation in my body. But when I was self-abandoning and doing something that wasn't true to myself, that's when I would have the tightness in my chest. And now that I've done so much work, the minute I self-abandon, I feel it in my body instantly. And I'm going to ask anyway, but I'm guessing you'd say like that's one of the first things you're going to work on with clients in helping them understand the emotional regulation like really early on in their recovery, right?
Yes. And meditation doesn't always have to look like sitting on the mountaintop. It's really more about those micro moments of safety and taking that deeper exhale that we feel like we're holding. Because oftentimes, whenever we're anxious and upset, we're not really getting that full deep breath that we need. And even recognize that I'm not breathing as deeply as I should, maybe I can pause for a minute and just take some really good deep breaths. And wow, that really did help me feel better.
Because when you breathe, it's the number one way to tell your body and your nervous system that you're okay. And it's so simple, but hand on your chest and a deep breath can calm your nervous system at least partially
Mm.
instantly. It's such
Yes.
a quick fix that most of us don't know. I feel like we should be teaching people in kindergarten how to do that.
I just need to pause for a minute and take a good deep breath. Yeah. It's the things
Yes.
that I'll end up working on for emotional regulation skills. It's being able to work on some grounding skills. So just being able to
Mm,
really get present in your moment and notice that because often with complex post traumatic stress disorder, we end up having these like, you think of flashbacks. And
yeah.
I can remember a time where I ended up back in the school, like, that I grew up in, back in my old high school. I don't remember exactly what it was for. I think there was some kind of event going on. But I want to say I was probably like 23, 24 when this happened. Being back in those hallways, it was like I could almost hear all the sounds again. I could
Yeah.
almost like see all the
Yeah.
faces. I can almost like hear all the really ugly things that were getting told to me. It was like I was back there. And that was a flashback, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So being able to even notice that I was having that flashback in that moment and then recognizing, okay, I'm not in that moment. Let me think about what I can do to better ground myself. I ended up walking outside and just really like touching the bench that I was sitting on. I ended up, listening to the birds. And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I was using that like five senses grounding technique.
Right. I love that technique. Yes. Yes.
So it's things of like maybe I wasn't doing it perfect, but it was still having the effect that I needed, along with breathing.
Yeah, and the five senses technique for listeners who don't know of it is looking around. So you look for things you can see, things you can hear, things you can smell, things you can touch, things you can taste, and just name them. And it helps you just get grounded and brings you back into the moment and the place and takes you out of the flashback or out of the fear if you're in a place where your nervous system thinks you're in danger. It's telling your nervous system, "Nope, I'm okay." How does rebuilding self-trust like change a woman's life, not just in relationships, but how she moves through the world?
So when a woman feels like she can trust herself, it really changes everything. It changes her need to feel like she needs to over explain, right? Why she made certain
Mhm.
decisions, why she's setting that boundary, why she can't come over for dinner tonight. She doesn't need to over explain all those things. It's very simple.
Right. Yep.
She stops feeling like she needs to chase the validation because she no longer needs the validation from others. She can trust herself to validate her own self.
Yep.
She feels like she can stop feeling confused by the chaos with
Yep.
connection to others. She
Mm.
can trust relationships to be healthier because she no longer has to outsource that safety because she can be her own anchor.
Yeah. Yeah, and she will eventually stop seeking out the old familiar relationships and seek out more healthy ones because that's going to feel more comfortable, right?
Absolutely.
So, a lot of what you work on, I think, also is teaching women to set boundaries without guilt or doubt. And it's such a big one. How do you help them embody that, especially if guilt and fear are their familiar states?
Yeah. So when we're talking about boundaries, it's a lot of practice. And I'm not saying that boundary setting is going to be easy. It can be hard,
Mhm.
but it's really rewarding whenever we do set those boundaries. So I'm a mom of two little boys. They're ages 5 and 8. and I use them as my examples quite often. And in this case, boundaries is always a really easy one to pick on with them. Because if you picture that 5 and 8-year-old, and I told them, let's say all summer, I told them they could stay up as late as they wanted to,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
They had no bedtime all summer. Maybe they could go to bed at like midnight. Let's just throw that number out there.
Right. Right.
But then I told them, okay, school's going to start tomorrow. You got to go to bed at 8 o'clock. Mom said, what?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, yeah. I mean, talk about watching the fireworks and seeing a tantrum.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they would very much embody that.
Mhm. Yep.
Now, when I set boundaries, and it's funny because as a mom, we don't think about setting boundaries with our children, but we do, right? We need to. We
Yep.
need to set boundaries
Yeah.
with our husband. We need to set boundaries with our kids, with our own parents,
Absolutely.
everyone. So when I set boundaries, like with my kids' example, maybe instead of telling them they could have till midnight, I say, hey guys, I know it's summer. Y'all can stay up a little later. Maybe it's going to be 10, right? Not
Yeah.
something crazy, crazy like midnight, but maybe 10. But then as
Yep.
school starts getting closer, I start telling them, hey, school's going to start in, I don't know, 2 weeks to a month time frame, right? Let's
Yep.
start going to bed at 9 now. And then, like that week before school, I tell them, okay, bedtime's going to be maybe 8:30, right? I'm slowly backing
Mhm.
it back up to where now when I tell them that bedtime is 8 o'clock, the first night of school, they don't even blink about it. They're just kinda like, "That's
Right.
just the way it is," and that's the
Right.
trick. Whenever you set these boundaries, the people that are going to be upset about the boundaries are the people that have been benefiting from your loose
Yes.
boundaries. If
Yep.
they really are your people, right? If they're
Yeah.
really, wanting to have that authentic, genuine, mutual relationship with you, and they really care about you, they're not going to be that upset. Like, maybe a little, but then they're gonna realize that you're doing it to protect yourself and they care about you, so they want you to protect yourself, take care of yourself.
Yeah. I think we see it happen a lot where people kind of fall away, and oftentimes those are the people who were benefiting from our lack of boundaries. I know for me, learning boundaries was actually learning self-permission, permission to rest, permission to say no, to not over explain things, to take time for self-care. And it felt really foreign at first, but that's what healing looks like. Practicing peace, practicing setting those boundaries. I always say that putting the oxygen on ourselves first and making time for ourselves first, especially as a mom. And it feels uncomfortable in the beginning, but you quickly realize that the people in your life who love you benefit you setting the boundaries and from no longer doing these things.
That you have the oxygen mask. I always refer to it as like, um, I can't pour from an empty cup. That's the kind of the saying I always use
Mhm.
because
Yep,
if I'm mom and I am always pouring into everyone else's cup, well, my cup is empty and I'm never giving myself permission to refill my cup when I
yep,
need to. And maybe look as simple as, hey, I'm going to go take a bath. I'm going to go sit in the bath and read my book for 30 minutes. And
yeah.
everyone needs to leave me alone.
Right, just take time for yourself. Yeah, a lot of my clients are going through either a breakup or divorce or something, some other big life transition. And unfortunately, I can't take away all of the pain and suffering that they're going through. We work through it and we prepare a lot and we work on a lot of the things we've talked about. But the last thing I usually tell them or ask them is, what are you going to do for yourself today? Like, what will make you feel better? What's your go-to calming mechanism if things go bad in this meeting you're going to have tomorrow? And as moms specifically, but I think even just as women who are not mothers, we have a tendency to put ourselves second, third, fourth, fifth, but we show up so much better for everybody when we put ourselves first. But when we grow up in a system like you did, or when we have a partner who is narcissistic or emotionally abusive, or we're in a relationship that becomes toxic, sometimes by both people, we
Right.
just tend to put ourselves further and further away. So I know that community is a big part of your work. What role does connection play in trauma recovery?
Action is so important in trauma recovery, especially when we're talking about the relational trauma aspects. So,
Hmm.
part of your, part of your trauma is social. It's this
Yeah.
social aspect that you needed others' validation. You feel like you always had to give yourself, like you were saying, to be second, third, fourth, last. And being able to have some of that mirror or being able to have some other perspective from others to be able to see, like, this is the same stuff that I was doing and now they're doing it. It's
Yep.
really it's really amazing to watch.
There's something about there's almost validation in hearing it from someone else. Like it's okay to do these things. And then as a matter of fact, you need to do these things to feel better and to heal and to move forward. How can women begin to rebuild healthy and authentic connections after things like a lot of my clients are dealing with betrayal, manipulation, gaslighting, all of these kind of typical toxic or narcissistic type behaviors? How do you rebuild healthy relationships and connections after living with that?
That's such a great question. I help so many of my clients that are trying to re-enter the dating world, and it's interesting to hear all their stories. Today's
Hmm.
dating world is
It's
definitely
rough out there. It's rough out there.
um and even though I will be the first to say, like, right, that I didn't have that experience with the dating world in the sense of, like, going out and dating apps and stuff like that. That was after I'd met my husband, thankfully.
Hmm. Yeah.
But, I can still share even my own experience with when I first started dating my husband, it was very difficult because even though he was giving off all the green flags, right?
Right.
Like, it still was this moment in myself of like, why am I uncomfortable with
Right.
someone who
Right.
just seems so great? I can't even find anything wrong with him. And then the light bulb moment of, oh, it's because I'm waiting and like to find something wrong.
Right. You're scanning,
I'm
constantly
searching.
scanning the environment, scanning for something to
Yes,
be
and going
wrong.
back to that
Yeah.
hypervigilance, right? I'm constantly looking for the danger. I'm
Yep.
looking for the mask to finally slip and his true face to show. I'm looking for him to say something that sounds just so incriminating that it's like, aha, there you are, right?
Right. I knew it. Yes.
I'm almost testing. And that's that where that
Yes.
moment of like self-sabotage kind of comes in because I'm over here testing the relationship that doesn't need to be tested.
Right. And there's hypervigilance and attempts to control. If you can control when they take their mask off or you can control when they hurt you, then somehow it seems like it'll be better. So you almost control to the point of creating a problem. Yeah.
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 Or even just if I can catch him up now before I've truly like invested my heart into this, then I won't get
Hmm.
so hurt.
Yep. Yep.
So, how do I work with women? I think that was your question earlier
Yep.
to work through these issues. Again, a lot of it takes being able to kind of use some of that soundboard technique of like, okay,
Mm,
let's look at the other perspective here, or okay, what about that situation felt uncomfortable? And when they
yeah.
tell me, well, it's just he's such a great guy. It like makes me laugh as a therapist because I'm like, okay, that's a problem.
Right.
They're like, well,
Right.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that. And what it
Yeah.
is they can't sit in the calm feeling, the comfortable.
Mhm.
And I kind of challenged them. I mean, when I first started dating my husband, I had, I am thinking of like a certain example in my head. I had a client tell me the other day, she's like, I'm not attracted to men that don't seem confident. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that definitely sounds like, but think about a narcissist, right?
Yeah, oh, they're so
Narcissists,
confident.
very confident. They're very charming. Oh, they're
Mhm.
such they seem like just this really strong, capable, amazing person.
Right?
And when that's been your type, right? That's when who you've been attracted to.
Yeah.
It's difficult when you think of, so what's the opposite of that? And the opposite of that, I'm going to pick on my husband.
It's boring.
It seems
It's really
boring,
boring. It's really boring.
right? And women are like, I don't want a boring guy. I don't want a guy that seems awkward and
Oh,
uncomfortable and quiet and shy. And I kind of challenge
yeah.
it of like, okay, but instead of looking at this as a bad thing, like let's look at it from this other side. Okay, he's shy and awkward and quiet. I literally just described my husband when I first met him. You kind of have to look at it from the sense of like, yeah, it's kind of cute, actually. Like, it's
Yeah.
kind of adorable. You know, it really does show that he really actually cares and that he's nervous, right? Because dating is
Yep.
a nervous thing. I mean, none of us
Yes.
go into a first date feeling, really comfortable. We're all
Yep.
nervous. And when you have this guy that's actually got these green flags, like he's gonna be nervous because he really wants you to like him. He's not playing games with you. He
Right.
wants you to genuinely, and maybe potentially have a life with him.
Yeah, I know when I re-entered the dating world, which I've never been a great dater. Like I didn't really date. I would kind of just meet people and then I know something would evolve. So re-entering the dating world at 47 after almost 20 years with someone, meaning there were no dating apps. And I mean, the nerves were off the charts, right? And I was listening to all kinds of podcasts and reading experts and like, oh my God, like what do I do? And I kept reading like if you feel butterflies, run. And I was like, I thought we wanted butterflies. No, we don't want butterflies because it's a sign like of your nervous system alerting you that something could be wrong. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't trust myself at all. But I get that now because now my boyfriend now, who I met 2 years ago, did ignite something inside of me, but it was different. It was calm and peace. He's not boring. He was a dazzler and a dater of many women and whatever. He has quite the history, I think, but we both immediately felt a safe feeling with one another. So I think the message I would send out is you can find the very charming, dazzling person, but the difference between one who may be love bombing and wearing the mask might be that there is a butterfly feeling and an overwhelming nervousness go away. For me, I did feel like a little butterflyish, but I felt more of like, wow, I feel so safe and so seen with this person like I had never felt before.
That's a great point you just made too, that being able to feel seen.
Yeah.
Because if you go on a date and it's like all they do is talk about themselves,
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
bit of a red flag, right?
Yes. Or ask you questions about like that are elimination questions. I was telling a friend actually today, one of the first people that I went on a date with asked if I was at my normal weight or if I had lost weight during the divorce and how much my weight fluctuated on our second date. And I was like, what? What? He was like, well, I've I'm asking because I've been with women who look one way when I meet them, and a month later or 2 months later, they've gained a lot. And I thought, oh my God, this person is going to make me a nervous wreck. And I had worked so hard on like correcting some body image issues that I had. And I thought, this is a no. This is a no. Like, this person is going to recreate body image issues that I've
Worked
gotten
hard
over.
to getting rid of. Yeah.
Right, right. So, I mean, sometimes they give you like a really quick red flag and you're like, oh, okay. And I did have kind of butterflies with that person. I felt like excited and nervous when I first met him. So it could be that they only talk about themselves, or they could ask you questions that raise a red flag. So
Right. Yeah, and that
it's a lot. It's a lot out there.
it's
Like,
hard.
a lot of my clients are like, once we get through their divorce process, like the next step is helping them learn to trust themselves again, get out there and meet people, and just really coaching them on that. And it's it's a challenging dating landscape, to say the least. But if a woman who's listening today feels kind of lost, full of self-doubt, or like she can't trust herself, what's the first step she can take, like right now?
I would say one of the first steps is really just trying to take some time to kind of sit with herself and
Mhm.
getting away from what everyone else has told her she needs to believe about herself, right? And
Yes,
being
yes,
able
yes.
to just think, what are my like most basic needs and values? And whenever I can start thinking about what is the things that are most important to me, I can start to align my life with the goal of reaching that value. And now I no longer have to worry about, well, everyone tells me that I need to give and give and give of myself, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the value. But I don't
Yep.
really feel like that's my value. I feel like I need to be outgoing. I
Yep.
I remember I think it's a little bittersweet moment of myself that I can share. So I remember being a kid, I was that girl that if you put me on the stage at like, I think I was like first or second grade when this happened. Like I remember being on stage in front of the school in like first or second grade and getting told, sing a solo. And I was in heaven. I was that girl.
Yep.
And then to later realize how much my voice had been taken from me to a point
Yes.
where I wasn't even talking for days at a time by the end of high school because it was like if I just don't say anything, I'm not giving anyone any ammunition to use against me.
Mm,
And realizing just how much of abandonment, that self abandonment piece that we talked about before, I'd given. And that wasn't really what I valued. I wanted to go back to having better confidence. And that confidence took a long time to get back. But being able to
yeah.
say, I can feel comfortable doing hard things. I can feel comfortable putting myself back in those vulnerable positions without worrying about everyone judging me.
Right. Right. So much of my healing and recovery have come in my 40s, and even just being on here, like, it makes me almost tear up, like having the courage and regaining my voice so much that I'm not afraid at all to start a podcast and get on here and have beautiful conversations with so many people. I When I think about it, like, I was the little girl who wanted to sing in front of the crowd too, and I shrank very early and stayed that way for a lot of my life. And so now when I think about like 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't have had the courage to do this. And in so many of my therapy sessions and my sessions with my spiritual person, it was all about my voice. How do I get my voice back? And so I think if someone listening could hear one thing from this episode, like there is hope, right? Like if you're in a fog and you're lost, like you don't have to stay there, right?
Right.
And the work you're doing, the work I do with clients, the community that you're building, like those are all parts of a way out of the fog and a way out of whatever self-abandoning you're doing. I know for me, there was a turning point where I became very intentional about my friends and my friend
Mhm.
group and the people I was surrounding myself with. And I always say I was kind of in the process of tearing the house down at that point. And when it was time to lay the foundation, I had to do that. But those people I surrounded myself became the scaffolding to like hold everything up while I rebuild. And so the community that you find, the community you're creating is instrumental in this process. So that said, I want to remind listeners like how to connect with you, learn more about your programming, your program, and reclaiming her voice method.
No, I definitely appreciate being on here. So
Yeah.
you can find me on Instagram at Clarissa Stolte, and you can find me on Facebook, Clarissa Stolte. They're pretty simple. I do want to say that, we talked earlier about the whole tagline, and again, it's such a big part of it because it really is kind of like the whole journey in one sentence, right? That rebuilding self-trust, reclaiming your voice, and rewriting your story, because
Mm,
when you rebuild your self-trust, you can start not depending on others to validate you. You can validate yourself. You can trust your gut. And when you reclaim your voice, you now can start setting those boundaries, that foundation, like you were sharing, to be able to start building that life that you want, that you're picturing, that aligns with your
yep,
values. And whenever you start rewriting your story, you're saying that maybe the narrative you had before wasn't the narrative that you wanted. And now you have the choice to be able to start living the life that you want on your terms and your voice.
yep, yep. It's incredible work you're doing. Incredible. All of your information will be in the show notes. If anyone wants to find you, they can. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for the work you're doing. It's not just about healing relationships and families, it's about helping women really come home to themselves again. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If
Thank you.
today's episode resonated with you, I just want you to remember this: your story isn't over. You're not broken. You never were. And you're becoming. And rewriting your story can be fun and wonderful and full of joy. So, if you want more conversations like this, follow along on Instagram at The Loom Life or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you again, Clarissa. Until next time, take a deep breath, trust your voice, and keep pulling the threads that lead you back to home.